And we welcome you to New York on a very busy Tuesday. We are so grateful to have you with us every single day. The AFA Today offices, where we are coming to you live from. And Kevin McCullough welcoming you back to another quite full week. I told you yesterday that there's something that I predicted a couple of weeks ago. Didn't feel very good about it, but felt like that it was really on target to be true. We looked at an example of that yesterday in which specific other non-labeled liberties, quote-unquote liberties, are going to continue to come into tension with the idea of religious liberties or the free expression of faith by individuals in this country, and that in the conflict that those, in this case, sexual liberties and religious liberties are going to have in teeing off against one another, that there's going to be more and more pressure by the courts to side with the sexual liberties side. Coming up later on the broadcast, we have a firsthand example of that today out of California that you need to know about, as the governor there has signed a disturbing piece of legislation that I want to get to. But before we do that, I've got a special guest with us, joining us on the AFA Today cam today and elsewhere. Lila Rose, no stranger to us, the head of Live Action founder. Lila, welcome back to AFA Today with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're here.
And I'm glad I'm here too. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Talk to me a little bit about this last Thursday, because there were a number of groups, pro-life groups in particular, that got together and held an event called the March on the Media. Tell us, first of all, what that was designed to be, and then tell us what was the reaction to it.
Sure. Well, we have been monitoring, and I think a lot of Americans understand that there's media bias out there, particularly from the mainstream NBC, CBS, and ABC. And Live Action has noticed this, especially in the last 6 years, really, of our investigative journalism. It took CBS literally 4 years to finally cover our investigative journalism, and this was when there was a vote in the House of the floor of the Representatives to say, let's defund Planned Parenthood. But we've documented this media bias. Well, just 3 weeks ago, we actually issued a letter to the executives of CBS, ABC, and NBC, calling for them to stop the blackout on pro-life issues and pro-life news and the bias. When it is covered, it's covered in a biased way. For example, Kermit Gosnell's trial was covered really not at all for 56 days on ABC television. On the 56th day of the trial with the conviction for murder of this abortionist, they finally did a very short segment. Meanwhile, they spent 3 times as much coverage on pro-abortion politician from Texas, Wendy Davis, lionizing her, making her look like this hero, this heroic figure. So what we did after sending these letters, we documented the media bias. Media Research Center also documented the media bias, really going through step by step some of the egregious cases, especially in the last 3 to 6 months. And then we decided we'd do something that hasn't been done before. And we actually went and staged a rally, a protest, outside of ABC's headquarters in Washington, D.C., and that's where we were on Thursday, joined with some friends from all over the pro-life movement. We had almost 200 people there, and ABC actually sent a news camera to document the protest of their own news organization. We have yet to see the footage from that cameraman, surprisingly, or I'm tongue-in-cheek, of course, it's not surprising.
Right, and we're speaking with Lila Rose. She's joining us from Washington, D.C. today, and it was called a March on the Media. Why that terminology? What was the idea there?
Well, the idea is, the media is supposed to be really a guardian. In fact, Winston Churchill has called journalism a guardian of the people, to help show the truth to people, to expose injustices, expose tyranny. But what has happened instead is the mainstream media has become a guardian for the very injustices, the greatest injustice that is hurting the most amount of people today, which is abortion, and all the different ways it hurts Americans, and it hurts our children, hurts women, hurts families. And we called it the March on Media because we usually expose the abortion industry, but literally ABC, NBC, and CBS have become basically people that are publicizing the abortion industry in a positive light and not showing any of the scandals or the abuse. And so they've become a partner. So therefore, we said, okay, we march for life. We march, for human rights. We're also going to march on the media to say, look, you're not doing your job as journalists. You cannot be trusted. It's time to report the truth. So we had signs that said, tell the truth about the unborn child's heartbeat. Tell the truth about fetal pain. tell the truth about the danger to women, because abortions are killing women, and there are these stories that people don't even know about, because instead Americans are hearing about a war on women, or they're hearing about Wendy Davis from Texas, this blonde pro-abortion woman. They're not hearing the real stories about what abortion is doing to children and women.
Well, and this is very, very vital, given the fact that we are in a day and age now, Lila, where information is so shady in terms of how it gets to the American public as a whole. The fact that you have the ability to control wholesale the way a message gets out, one way or another, to the masses, is really it's really one of the most manipulated pieces of the discussion, of the dynamic in terms of social change, in terms of social needs. And it is not at all what we envisioned being truly the role and the responsibility of the media, particularly a media that's being given the right to tell the truth, when in so many places on this planet you have wholly owned state-run media. It seems the co-opting of the American media is a much greater travesty in some cases than media that's owned by the government at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at the history of journalism, and I was just at the Newseum in DC checking out the history of journalism in the United States and even internationally over the last 200 years, and you look at some of the rise of many of these, leading investigative journalists and these people that have started, founded newspapers or magazines, a lot of it has been advocacy journalism, because the lies of the era, the lies of the day, have been accepted by the media, the big media at the time, whether the major newspapers or the major television networks, and they're not reporting the truth. And the sad thing is, ABC, NBC, and CBS, they claim to be reporting the tough stories of the day. That's part of their, the mentality of the journalist. I have integrity. I'm taking people to term with their own biases. I'm tackling the tough issues. But instead, they are caught up in the very same lies of the day, that abortion should not be talked about, but when it is, it has to be talked about in a way that makes Planned Parenthood look positive, even though they're the biggest abortion chain, and that takes really the sound bites or the talking points of pro-abortion politicians and then just repeats them without even questioning them.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin, it was shocking. ABC News reporter in one of their television segments of Wendy Davis is asking this pro-abortion politician about her red running shoes that she used while she was filibustering against a pro-life bill. They asked her about whether or not she used a urinary catheter. They asked her all these questions that were personal to her, and they didn't once ask her what the bill was that she was filibustering against. And it was a bill that bans abortion at 20 weeks, which the majority of Americans want. But they didn't even identify what the bill was. Instead, they made Wendy look like a hero and talking about her personal appearance and about how hard it was to do what she did, making the average ABC viewer think, oh, this lady looks pretty heroic. This is pretty cool. Not once knowing what she was even filibustering against. And that's
Right.
a case of bias.
Well, and that case in Texas in particular was so important from my standing, because I don't think you've had a more definitive moment in the pro-life movement than when you had the people working for the side of both the health and safety of women and the health and safety of babies. Again, the bill wasn't just banning abortion at 20 weeks or later. It was also saying that if women were going to get surgical procedures, they should be done in facilities that are the same quality as any other surgical procedure, and not have people that couldn't get into real medical school butchering their uterus and other female organs because they're abortion providers. It was actually but to get to that point of definition, you had the supporters of Wendy Davis chanting "Hail Satan." You had the supporters of the unborn singing "Amazing Grace." This is a debate, and Lila, you know this as well as anybody because of the stuff that you investigate all the time. There is so much dishonesty laced inside of the for-profit business that abortion is. I wonder if we will ever have an honest telling of it by the major media.
I think that we have to at least do our due diligence and call out the media for their bias and make sure people see it. I mean, we're doing a public protest. Of course, all the offices nearby, we got great coverage from the more, side of the mainstream media sources who were talking about it and reporting on it. So our job is to make noise and say to the American public, look, you cannot trust ABC, NBC, and CBS because they're more interested in, which I think is sexist, they're more interested in the color of a woman's hair, the color of her shoes, the style of her shoes, than they are about what the bill she is fighting for or against is. And that's just showing the superficiality of the media in this case, and also the extreme bias. I mean, the Media Research Center did a fantastic job. The information is on March on Media, lifemarchonmedia.com, documenting literally dozens of cases of bias in just the last few months. And this is from the same groups that claim to be fair and balanced, that claim to have this integrity. So we're hoping that people get the word out, and that all that information is lifemarchonmedia.com. There's actually a petition that you can sign as well, because if you're, in another state and you're not able to come to one of our rallies, we want you to get involved online. So we're doing different activism events that way as well.
Yeah. We're speaking with Lila Rose, who's the president and founder of Live Action, and of course that's liveaction.org. Real quickly, Lila, just tell us what's next for this group of people and your goal in that event. Is there another event scheduled? Is there a way that listeners can get involved right now?
Sure. Well, we will keep you posted on the next event. There's different options: NBC, CBS, New York City, DC. I mean, there's affiliates all over the country, of course. But what you can do right now is go to lifemarchonmedia.com, sign the petition, share the information, the letters we've written to the executives, the report on media bias on your Facebook, on Twitter, with friends and family, with coworkers. Because even if people may not be pro-life, maybe not yet anyways, at least they can see the complete and extreme bias of the big three, of the mainstream media here. And that way they can maybe help to question, hey, when I'm listening to TV or the radio and I'm hearing a story, maybe I should ask some critical questions of how they're approaching the story, what information they're not sharing in the story, the opposing point of view they're not including. There's a lot of critical questions that Americans should be asking if they are going to be watching any ABC, CBS, or NBC TV or radio.
All right. Lila, thank you for joining us live from Washington today. We're always pleased to welcome you back to the microphone, and glad that you're here today.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Kevin McCullough on AFA Today. We've got a lot to yet get to, and coming up on the rest of this broadcast, I wanted you to hear from Lila directly at the top, because when you see how the media is just dealing with the abortion issue, and given what we know about the demographics of abortion in the population at large, we've got a different day dawning on the issue of life. I've said that for a while. We're starting to win this argument, and it's through a variety of means. It's activism like Lila's group. It's investigation that's getting in there and telling you the truth, and it's holding people accountable. On some other issues, we're getting an even worse dichotomy than we got before, and one of those is the protection of religious liberties, particularly in light of the religious liberties issues as they butt heads against what some are calling sexual liberties. Now, I don't know anything in the Constitution that addresses someone's sex life. I've not seen any language anywhere that has said someone has the right to have sex, not have sex, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a whole new concept, at least for the dunder brain like me. But at the end of the day, I did see this coming a number of weeks ago, talked with you about it after the Supreme Court cases came down. We have two diametrically opposed trains running full speed at one another. On one side, it's the rights of people to practice their faith. On the other, it's the espoused rights of people to not be criticized for their sexual activities. And in California, they are coming to a head today through the actions of the governor there, and I'm going to tell you that story when we continue. On today's edition of AFA Today, from New York in the studios of AFA Today, I'm Kevin McCullough. Stay with us.